There was something artificial about the way her laugh cut through the bar noise. It was sharp, a little too loud, like she was trying to prove to the room that she was still fun, still young, still wanted. I sat beside her, nodding along to a joke I hadn't really heard, fingers tracing the rim of my whiskey glass. The ice had melted into the amber by then, making it weaker than I felt. She leaned in closer, her perfume faint but familiar, like memory diluted in water. We were on a date. That's what she'd called it. A reset, she said, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Let's just pretend tonight we're new again. No history. No heaviness. I said yes because I still wanted to believe we had a future worth salvaging. The bar was upscale but trying hard not to be. Brick walls, filament bulbs hanging from iron rods, a chalkboard menu filled with cocktails that sounded like poems. I'd picked it because it felt neutral. Not a place with memories already embedded in the walls. Not the Italian spot where we used to sit knee to knee. Not the diner where she told me about her promotion, back when she used to tell me things. This was fresh, clean, a blank slate. She was wearing that dark green dress, the one she only pulled out for weddings or apology dinners. Her hair was pinned up loosely, the way she knew I liked it, little wisps framing her face like punctuation marks. For a moment, I let myself believe in the illusion that this was a restart, that we were two people with potential, not two people surviving damage. Then I made the mistake of standing up. "Bathroom," I said, sliding off the stool. "Be right back." She smiled at me, hand lightly brushing mine. "Don't take forever." I was just starting to have fun. I didn't see it then. But looking back, that was the moment. That half-second touch, that too-perfect smile. It was like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. The hallway to the restroom was dim and narrow, painted black with some vintage band posters peeling at the edges. Inside, the bathroom smelled like mint and bleach. I stared at myself in the mirror longer than I meant to. I looked tired. Not just tired, dimmed. Like someone had turned the saturation down on my life. By the time I walked back out, maybe 4 minutes had passed. 5 at most. But 5 was all she needed. She was still on her stool, angled toward the man next to her. He was older than I expected. Maybe 45. Tan, in a trying too hard kind of way. Buttoned down slightly unbuttoned. That smug, lean-in confidence men only get when they think the world owes them something. And she was laughing. Laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me all night. I stood behind her, just out of view. Invisible. Listening. He said something I didn't catch, probably a compliment cloaked in flirtation. She leaned toward him, brushing hair behind her ear in that practiced way. Then she said it. Casual. Like it wasn't a betrayal. Like it was a joke that just slipped out. "I'm actually married. But you're just my type." Those words landed like a glass shattering against tile. Quiet at first. But once the cracks formed, nothing stayed intact. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. I just walked up and sat back down beside her. She didn't notice at first. Her drink was tilted toward her lips, her eyes on him. Not me. I turned to the bartender, ordered another round, and let the ice settle in my glass. The man gave me a nod, a polite one, assuming I was just the guy sitting next to her, not with her. And her? She took one full second too long to realize I was back, then blinked like she'd woken from a dream. "Oh," she said, "you're back." I didn't ask who he was. Didn't ask what they were laughing about. I didn't need to. The performance was over. The curtain had dropped. And I realized, sitting there, that I'd already left the marriage. I just hadn't known it yet. She'd replaced me before I even stood up. And the worst part? She didn't look guilty. She looked alive. She tried to play it off. Rolled her shoulders like she was easing tension, smiled like it didn't matter. But I saw the way her hand drifted too quickly to her necklace, fingers worrying the thin gold chain the way she used to when she lied about staying late at work. "I was just chatting," she said, her tone light, almost amused. He thought I looked like someone he knew. She left out the part where she said he was her type. Left it dangling in the air like a coat she didn't want to claim. I nodded, not looking at her. Not looking at him either. Just the drink in front of me. The kind of silence that presses in, not accusing, not forgiving. Just heavy. The guy next to her picked up on the shift. He stood quickly, tossing down some bills like a man who didn't want to be there for the aftermath. He didn't apologize. Didn't look at me. Just said, "Nice to meet you," and vanished into the crowd. We sat there, both of us pretending nothing had happened. It's incredible how quickly you can become strangers again. A week earlier, she'd stood in our kitchen in that oversized UCLA sweatshirt, telling me she wanted to reconnect. Her voice was soft, deliberate, measured. She'd placed 2 mugs of tea on the counter like peace offerings. "Maybe we should go out," she said. "Just us. No distractions." I had said yes too quickly, like someone grabbing at a rope in a flood. I should have known something was wrong when she suggested the bar. She hated bars. Too loud, she used to say. Too messy. She liked quiet places with wine lists and candlelight. But this time, she dressed like she wanted to be seen. Not by me. By someone. Back at the bar, she took a long sip from her drink, then turned to me with that too smooth voice. "Don't be weird about it." That stung. I hadn't said a word. She touched my arm, trying to anchor me to her version of the night. "You disappeared. What was I supposed to do? Sit here in silence?" I could have laughed, but it would have sounded too much like surrender. "You're married," I said, my voice low. "Steady. That's what you're supposed to do." She winced, just slightly, like I'd stepped on a bruise. But then she smiled again. "Don't make this bigger than it is." I looked at her. Really looked. And something was different. Not just the makeup or the dress or the sudden tolerance for overpriced gin. Her eyes were lighter. Looser. Like she was unburdened. Like she'd already made peace with something I hadn't been told about yet. I should have left then. Called the night what it was, a eulogy dressed as a date. Instead, I finished my drink, paid the bill, and followed her out into the cold night air. She slipped her hand through my arm like nothing had happened. We walked 2 blocks in silence, our footsteps echoing down the empty street. I noticed she didn't lean into me, didn't glance up. It was muscle memory, nothing more. Back in the car, I turned the heater on. She fiddled with the radio, settling on a song I didn't know. The lyrics were all about forgetting, starting over. She hummed along. "Halfway home," she said, "You're always so serious lately." I didn't answer. Because what was I supposed to say? I'm serious because I'm married to someone who flirts with strangers while I'm pissing in a bar bathroom? I'm serious because I watched the love drain out of your eyes 2 years ago, and I keep waking up hoping it'll come back? She shifted in her seat. "You've changed." I almost laughed, but the weight in my throat wouldn't budge. I dropped her off at our apartment building, then drove around the block before coming back to park. When I walked in, the lights were already off. She was in bed, back turned to me, one leg sticking out from under the sheets. Her dress lay in a careful heap on the chair, the same way she always folded her past. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. There's something cruel about sleeping next to someone who's already gone. That night, I lay beside her without touching her, staring at the ceiling, counting all the ways she'd pulled away in the last year. The missed kisses, the silence in the mornings, the sudden carefulness with her phone, the way she always seemed just a little too far away. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was paranoid, that marriages go through seasons. But lying there in that room, hearing her soft, even breath, I knew. She wasn't mine anymore. And maybe she hadn't been for a long time. 3 days passed before she brought it up again. I was making coffee. She was scrolling on her phone, perched on the kitchen stool like a houseguest too polite to leave. The robe she wore wasn't hers. Not really. It used to be mine, soft gray, fraying at the collar, and she'd claimed it during our 2nd year of marriage. Said it smelled like me. Said that was comforting. Now she wore it like armor, something to hide in, something borrowed, something safe. She looked up and said, "Are you still mad?" I stirred the coffee without answering. The smell filled the room, bitter, full-bodied. It used to be our favorite part of Sunday mornings. I wasn't flirting, she added, looking back at her phone like she didn't care if I believed her. It was nothing. I placed the mug in front of her. No sugar, just the way she didn't like it anymore. She took one sip, made a face, and pushed it away. "It didn't seem like nothing," I said quietly. She shrugged. "You always overthink things." I wanted to ask her how long it had been happening. Not just the bar, but the pulling away, the smiles I hadn't earned, the empty silences. I wanted to ask if he was the only one, or just the most recent. Instead, I said nothing, because I knew how these conversations went. I'd play the interrogator. She'd play the victim. And by the end, I'd be apologizing for having feelings. She left for work that morning without saying goodbye. Just closed the door gently behind her like she was trying not to wake something. The apartment felt colder after that. I sat in the quiet, sipping her untouched coffee, and thought about how subtle betrayal can be. It's not always lipstick stains or text messages or strangers at bars. Sometimes it's the way she doesn't ask how your meeting went. The way she forgets your mother's surgery date. The way she stops saying "be safe" when you leave the house. I started noticing things. Small. Insidious. She'd changed her lock screen. It used to be a photo of us at the lake, her sitting in my lap, both of us grinning like idiots. Now it was a flower. A white peony. She never liked peonies. She began setting her phone face down at dinner. She started humming again. Tunes I didn't recognize. She wore perfume to the grocery store. And one night, after she thought I was asleep, I heard her whispering in the living room. Not laughing. Not giggling. Just whispering. Soft. Careful. Deliberate. I lay still, eyes wide open in the dark. She was cheating. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need proof. But proof came anyway. It was almost accidental. I was looking for a charger. Hers was gone, always borrowed by her coworkers, she said. So I opened the nightstand drawer on her side of the bed. Inside, a small black notebook. Slim. Matte cover. Tucked beneath a receipt for Thai takeout and an old pair of earrings I thought she'd lost. I didn't open it at first. I held it in my hand like it might bite. But my fingers moved before my conscience could argue. Inside were scribbles. Loose notes. A list of cities. Miami. Austin. Montreal. Beneath that, a name. Jared. Underlined twice. Then the phrase, "Tell him after Thanksgiving." My breath caught. I flipped the page. Hotel confirmations. Not in our city. Not during her claimed client visits. One in May. One in July. One last week. She hadn't just cheated at the bar. The bar was an afterthought. A symptom. The disease had started long before. I put the notebook back exactly where I found it. Closed the drawer. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the hardwood floor like it might offer answers. When she came home that night, she kissed me on the cheek. Distracted. Distant. She smelled like new perfume. Something sharp and citrusy. I asked how work was. She said, "Fine." Then added, "I might have to go to Seattle next month. Just for a few days." I nodded. Seattle wasn't on her list. But Montreal was. She undressed in the bathroom. I heard the water run. The soft scrape of a razor against her leg. The familiar rhythm of her nightly routine. Then the light clicked off. The door opened. She walked past me in silence, climbed into bed, and faced away. I stared at her back for a long time. There are things you can't ask when you already know the answer. And that night, I realized I was sleeping beside someone who'd already left. She started humming in the mornings. That was new. Little melodies under her breath while she poured almond milk into her coffee, fingers tapping lightly on the ceramic like she was trying to summon a rhythm only she could hear. She hadn't done that in years. Not since the early days. Not since before we stopped dancing in the kitchen after midnight. I watched from the doorway, arms crossed, wondering who had given her her voice back. There's a cruelty in watching someone come alive again in a life that no longer includes you. A certain kind of resurrection that looks beautiful from the outside, but inside, it feels like burial. That week, she started coming home later. Always with the same explanation. Got stuck at work. Had to help Sarah with the pitch. Last-minute drinks with the team. She used to text when she'd be late. Now she didn't bother. One night, I waited up. Just to see. The clock blinked 12:37 a.m. when the door finally opened. She smelled like gin and something floral I didn't recognize. Her eyes were tired, but her cheeks were flushed. Not the exhaustion kind. The kind that comes from laughter and leaning too close to someone you shouldn't. She didn't see me on the couch. Just kicked off her heels, humming again, and padded barefoot toward the bedroom. That was the moment something cracked, not in her, but in me. I didn't follow her. I didn't ask. I grabbed my jacket and left. I walked the neighborhood for nearly an hour, past sleeping houses and porch lights left on like prayers. I didn't have a destination, just a desire to move, to bleed off the ache before it calcified into something worse. That's when I found myself outside the bar. The same one. The place it started. It was closed, of course. Chairs flipped on tables. Lights out. But the sidewalk still smelled faintly of beer and rain. I sat on the curb, pulled out my phone, scrolled to her contact, stared at it, then scrolled past. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed out everything I'd wanted to say. Not to send, just to get it out of me. You left me before you ever packed a bag. You stopped kissing me with meaning 6 months ago. You share more with strangers now than you do with me. You hum when you're thinking about him. Whoever he is. You called it just talking, but I know what it feels like when someone's choosing someone else. I saved it. Didn't title it. When I got home, she was asleep. The next morning, something changed. Not in her. In me. I started detaching. Slowly. Strategically. When she mentioned Seattle again, I nodded but didn't ask questions. When she forgot to kiss me goodbye, I didn't remind her. When she left her phone unlocked on the counter, I didn't look. I didn't need to. I already knew. But something happened I didn't expect. I stopped hurting. Not all at once. Not like ripping a bandage. But like a slow, careful fade. Grief gave way to clarity. And in that clarity, I began to see the version of myself I'd lost. The one who used to laugh without checking if she approved. The one who didn't shrink himself to fit inside someone else's silence. I went back to the old cafe near my office. The one she hated. Too dusty, she'd always said. I liked the dust. It made the place feel lived in. The barista remembered me. Called me by name. Asked where I'd been. Married life, I said, and it sounded like a punchline. I started staying later at work. Volunteered for a new project. Walked the city alone and watched people living lives untouched by betrayal. There was something comforting in knowing the world kept turning, even when mine felt like it had stopped. Then, one afternoon, she texted me. Can you come home early tonight? We need to talk. The phrase felt scripted. Waited. I knew what was coming. But what surprised me was how calm I felt. Not like a man waiting to be sentenced. More like someone ready to walk out of prison. I came home to find her sitting at the table. Her posture straight. Hands folded. Not in apology. In resolve. She didn't look up when I entered. Just gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. The silence stretched. Then, softly, she said, "There's someone else." I nodded. Her eyes flicked up, startled. That's all. I met her gaze. I know. She opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to justify. But I held up a hand. You don't have to. But I want to, she said. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't telling me for closure. She was telling me for permission. She needed me to absorb her guilt, to release her from the wreckage without making her walk through it. I stood slowly, pushing the chair back with a quiet scrape. You don't need to explain. Just tell me if you want out. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then nodded. Yes, she said, barely audible. I left the room, packed a small bag. Just clothes. Essentials. A charger. My dignity. As I zipped it shut, I realized something strange. I wasn't devastated. I was free. I didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't ask why him, or how long, or what I did to make her choose someone else. I just left. The bag over my shoulder felt lighter than it should have, like I was carrying not belongings, but proof that she was never going to fight for me, that this was the only ending we'd ever had a shot at. I stayed at a hotel for 2 nights. One of those anonymous places off the highway, where the walls are thin and the hallways smell like bleach and dryer sheets. I didn't sleep much, just lay there staring at the ceiling, the glow of the TV flickering in the background, listening to the couple next door fight about dinner. On the 3rd day, she called. I let it ring. She texted after. Can we talk? Just once. Please. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied, 1 hour. Tonight. I'll come by. I didn't know her that, but I think part of me wanted to see what version of her would answer the door. The woman who used to fall asleep on my chest while pretending to like my terrible movie pics, or the one who smiled at a stranger like he was a fresh start. She opened the door before I could knock. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, sleeves of an old sweatshirt pulled over her hands. The same way she used to dress on Sundays when the world felt quiet. Hey, she said. Hey. We sat across from each other in the living room. 2 mugs on the table between us. Hers untouched. Mine going cold. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at her hands. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, she said finally. I smiled. Not kindly. You mean at the bar? Or before? She flinched. Before. I nodded. So how long? She hesitated. About 6 months. That lined up with what I'd suspected. The perfume. The humming. The sudden patience with strangers and absence at home. I sipped the coffee. Bitter. Perfect. She kept talking. I only half listened. He made me feel seen. I know that sounds. It doesn't, I interrupted. She looked at me, surprised. You stopped seeing me a long time ago, I said. Her mouth opened. Closed again. Then, quietly, I know. There was no fury left in me. No urge to beg or shout or dissect the timeline. I didn't need her shame. I just needed truth. You fell out of love? I said. That happens. What I don't understand is why you didn't just leave. She looked down. Because I didn't want to be the bad guy. I laughed then. Not loudly. Just a breath with teeth. That's exactly what makes you the bad guy. She nodded, blinking fast. But no tears came. You deserved better, she said. You don't get to say that, I said, standing. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a small envelope, slid it across the table. What's this? Everything I know, I said. Every hotel. Every fake excuse. All of it. Her eyes widened. Why? In case you ever forget who you became, I said. You don't owe me anything, but I'm not letting you rewrite it. She didn't touch the envelope, just stared at it like it was glowing. I picked up my bag from the corner. Where will you go? She asked. Anywhere else, I said. Somewhere without ghosts. She stood too, arms crossed now. Defensive. Small. If you'd just said something earlier. I looked at her. Really looked. No, I said. Don't do that. Don't hand me pieces of your guilt like I'm supposed to clean it up. She looked away. I walked to the door. But before I left, I turned back. You know the worst part? I said. She didn't answer. You didn't fall in love with someone else. You just got tired of being known. I left her standing there, in the apartment we used to call home, beside 2 mugs and an envelope she'd never opened. The elevator was slow. The hallway felt longer than usual. But my hands weren't shaking. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to prove I was worth staying for. I moved into a sublet 2 towns over. A one-bedroom above a florist, where the scent of eucalyptus bled through the floorboards in the morning. The kitchen sink leaked, and the walls were too thin, but no one lied to me there. No one asked where I'd been or why I flinched at simple questions. It was quiet, and the quiet was honest. I started cooking again. Not to impress her. Not to post pictures. Just to eat. Just to prove I still knew how to care for something. Even if that something was just myself. At night, I walked. No destination. Just the rhythm of shoes on pavement and the ache of memory scraping my ribs from the inside. Sometimes I thought about the bar. That moment frozen in time, like a shard of glass embedded just beneath the skin. Me standing behind her, hearing those words. The way her voice lilted when she said, "You're just my type." How easily it came out of her. How rehearsed it sounded. I think about that moment more than I should. Not because it hurt the most, but because it told the truth I hadn't wanted to hear, that there was nothing left to salvage. That she wasn't confused or conflicted or broken. She had just moved on. While sitting next to me, I still don't know who he was. The man at the bar. The placeholder. The catalyst. It doesn't matter now. He wasn't the beginning. Just the moment the mask slipped. A month after I left, she texted me a photo. It was the lake. The place we used to go every September. The dock. Empty. The water. Still. "Miss this place," the message read. "Hope you're okay." I stared at it for a long time. Thought about replying. Thought about asking why she sent it. If she missed the view or the version of me who used to sit beside her on that dock. Legs dangling off the edge like we had nowhere else to be. I didn't respond. She texted again, a week later. A longer message this time. I keep thinking about that night. I hate how it ended. I didn't expect you to leave like that. You were always the one who stayed. She was right. I was always the one who stayed. Through the late nights. The cold silences. The slow erosion of intimacy. I stayed because I thought love meant endurance. I thought being there, being consistent, would be enough. But the truth is, I was staying for someone who left a long time ago. I didn't reply to that message either. Eventually, the text stopped. She didn't call. She didn't ask to meet again. And I didn't offer. One afternoon, I passed by the bar. Not the same one. A different place. Similar brick walls. The same low hum of after-work laughter drifting into the street. I peeked in. A couple sat at the bar. Laughing. Leaning in. New and shiny and full of potential. It looked real. But then again, so did we once. I walked past without stopping. Back at my apartment, I opened the notebook I'd started keeping. Just fragments. Sentences that didn't go anywhere. Bits of anger that had nowhere to land. Things I needed to say, even if no one would hear them. At the top of a blank page, I wrote, "I didn't lose you. You let me go." Then I closed the notebook and put it back on the shelf. I don't know if she ever thinks about me. If she ever replays that night in the bar. If she wonders what would have happened if she'd said something else. If she'd told him no. If she'd turned to me instead. But I do know this. I don't wait for her anymore. I don't check my phone hoping her name will light it up. I don't reread the text she sent before everything went quiet. I don't need to. Because there's nothing left between us. Not anger. Not regret. Not love. Just silence. And for the first time in years, that silence feels like peace. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.